An iceberg didn't sink the Titanic. A message did. On April 14, 1912, the Atlantic was sending warnings all day. Ice fields, drifting bergs, frozen danger directly ahead. Multiple ships transmitted alerts to the RMS Titanic. One of those warnings was urgent. It described heavy pack ice exactly where Titanic was heading. But that message never reached the bridge. It never reached Captain Smith. It never reached the officer holding the wheel. Instead, it landed in the wrong place. And in 1912, one small communication failure was enough to change history forever. By the evening of April 14th, ice warnings were flooding in. Ships across the North Atlantic were reporting thick pack ice and massive drifting bergs. But inside the wireless room of the RMS Titanic, something else had priority. Passenger messages. Wealthy travelers were sending personal telegrams to New York. Stock updates, social plans, private conversations. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride were overwhelmed with commercial traffic. They worked for the Marconi company, not directly for the ship's command. Their job was to clear the message backlog. Navigation warnings became just another stack of paper, and that pressure would prove fatal. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because no one else can give you research-driven videos like ours. Because what happened next was not an accident. At 10:55 p.m., a nearby ship broke through the static. It was the SS Californian. Its operator, Cyril Evans, sent a direct message. He warned that his ship was surrounded by heavy ice. So much ice that they had stopped moving for the night. The signal was strong, too strong. It blasted into Titanic's headphones while Jack Phillips was sending passenger traffic to Cape Race. Phillips was exhausted, behind schedule, under pressure, and instead of forwarding the warning to the bridge, he snapped back. "Shut up. I am busy." Minutes later, Evans turned off his radio and went to bed. Titanic was now sailing blind. When Cyril Evans powered down his radio, the ocean went silent. No one aboard the RMS Titanic knew the nearest ship had stopped in ice just miles away. That final warning was never delivered to Captain Edward Smith. It was never posted in the chart room. It never reached the officer calculating their speed. Instead, it stayed inside the wireless room, folded, ignored, lost in commercial traffic. Titanic was still moving at nearly full speed through a known ice field. The night was calm. The sea was flat. There were no breaking waves against the ice to reveal danger ahead. And without that final warning, the bridge believed the path was clear. Less than an hour later, a lookout would spot something dark directly ahead. At 11:40 p.m., the lookout rang the bell 3 times. Iceberg, dead ahead. The order was given to turn, engines reversed. But the RMS Titanic was moving too fast for the distance left. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side. Not a dramatic crash, just a long, tearing sound below the waterline. 6 watertight compartments were opened to the sea. The ship was only designed to survive 4. And here's the part no one realized yet. If that 10:55 warning had reached the bridge, Titanic might have slowed. She might have changed course. She might have reached New York. Instead, the most advanced ship in the world was already dying, and most passengers still had no idea. Below deck, engineers were already fighting a losing battle. Water poured in faster than the pumps could handle. Upstairs, many passengers didn't believe anything was wrong. The band kept playing. The ship still looked stable. Inside the wireless room, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride were now sending distress calls, CQD, then SOS. The irony was brutal. Hours earlier, safety warnings had been treated like interruptions. Now the same wireless system was their only hope. Nearby ships received the distress. But the closest one, the SS Californian, was silent. Its radio operator was asleep. And on its deck, crew members saw lights in the distance. They even saw rockets in the sky, but they didn't move. On the deck of the SS Californian, officers watched strange white rockets rise into the night. They weren't colorful celebration flares. They were distress signals. But the captain hesitated. The ship they saw looked small, far away. They assumed it couldn't be serious. No one woke the wireless operator. No one broke the silence. Just 10 miles away, the RMS Titanic was slowly tilting forward. Lifeboats were being lowered half full. Passengers were starting to understand the truth. And the one ship close enough to change everything stayed still. Because a warning had been dismissed and a radio had been turned off. By 2 a.m., the bow was deep underwater. The angle of the deck was now impossible to ignore. Panic replaced disbelief. Lifeboats were nearly gone. Inside the wireless room, Jack Phillips kept transmitting until power failed. The lights flickered, then darkness. Minutes later, the RMS Titanic split apart. The stern rose high into the freezing Atlantic sky. At 2:20 a.m., it vanished beneath the surface. Over 1,500 people were left in water below freezing. And only then did the SS Californian finally understand something was terribly wrong. But by the time they moved, the ocean had already taken its answer. When the sun rose, the scale of the disaster became clear. The SS Californian had been less than 20 miles away, close enough to see rockets, close enough to respond, but too disconnected to understand. Later investigations would question everything. Why weren't the ice warnings prioritized? Why was the radio turned off? Why did officers ignore the rockets? No single mistake sank the Titanic. It was a chain. Commercial pressure, human fatigue, assumptions, small decisions stacking on top of each other. And at the center of it all was a message. Not destroyed, not erased, just delivered to the wrong desk. And history has never stopped asking what might have happened if it hadn't. In the end, the Iceberg was only the final blow. The real tragedy began hours earlier inside a wireless room. A warning interrupted, a signal dismissed, a radio switched off for the night. The RMS Titanic was called unsinkable, but it was never unstoppable. It depended on people, on judgment, on communication. If that final ice warning had reached the bridge, would speed have been reduced? Would course have changed? Would 1,500 lives have been spared? We will never know. Because sometimes history doesn't collapse from one massive failure. It collapses from one message that never reached the right hands. And the Atlantic still keeps that silence.